What's up? It's the Rebel Scum Roundtable. I'm Brock. This is
James.
And it is Thursday in Canada, but in the States, it's Thanksgiving.
Oh, they're very thankful down there.
Yeah, so we're doing our usual round table. So what are we talking about today, James?
We're talking about Star Wars, surprisingly enough.
Nice.
And we're going to talk about the state of live-action Star Wars on Disney+.
Just like how it's Thanksgiving in the States. Perfect.
We're thankful
for
Disney+. But we can't do this alone, Brock.
Of course not.
We can't do it alone.
Let's bring in Kathleen Kennedy. You're fired.
Yes, I heard at 11:30 a.m. this morning she was let go from Lucasfilm. And we have her replacement on the line. Let's bring him up.
Yo! Happy Thanksgiving, gentlemen. How are you?
Thanks for taking time away from your turkey gobbly.
You know, the main reason I'm here is because my family is talking politics at the dining room table. And the only thing orange I want to talk about is the pumpkin pie. So I came up here and I'm like, I'm going to talk to my Canadian friends because you guys have your own problems, but they're different problems. And I'm just happy to be here. How's it going, guys? It's been a year.
Wow. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. This is your fourth time on the Thanksgiving Roundtable.
Yes, I told my wife this, and she was like, "What are you, like, Canadian famous?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm just happy.
It's depressing that it's been 4 years though. We're all aging. It's like, oh man.
Look, and we're all still doing our dumbass podcast. But it's amazing.
Yeah, but people listen to yours.
The amazing thing is there's still Star Wars to talk about. That's amazing to me. We're 4 years later, and like there's more Star Wars to talk about. So this is awesome. I'm just glad to be here, and it's good to see you guys again.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us.
All right,
let's talk about Star Wars. Let's talk about the very first thing. This happened 2 days ago, not earlier today, because this is live. 2 days ago. Disney, Lucasfilm, Star Wars, whatever, announced that Skeleton Crew is coming out a day earlier on Monday, December 2nd. I think we should talk. I don't know. I didn't tell you guys we're going to talk about this, but screw what I say. We make it up as we go along.
We're doing it live.
Yeah, we're doing it live. But I was like, because at first, I don't know about you guys, but I was like, I'm excited for the show. And then it was so quiet for so long. I was like, am I excited for the show? Like, is there something wrong with it? Like, I don't know. Why aren't you showing me stuff? And now I'm like, you know what? I have full faith in Skeleton Crew that if it's terrible, I'll eat my words. But I'm like, this could be a diamond in the rough. I don't know, Brock, I'll start with you, then Pete. Like, I think this is exciting. Like, I think this shows confidence in what it is. So I'm excited for it, Brock.
I would love Disney Plus to figure out their drop schedule in a sense. Like, we got used to, was it Friday at first?
Friday, yeah.
And then it was Wednesday, and then of course, like the time change, and then sometimes it's early morning, sometimes it's like 9 o'clock for us, 6 o'clock for the West Coast. So then this is Monday. You sent me the schedule, and I didn't actually look at what day of the week.
Yeah, just for this episode, these two episodes. Yeah.
That's for what? I guess you know what. It's streaming. It's the Wild West. You can do whatever you want because it's not like you have to fill commercial time in or something like that or run a tape. Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I have been counting down the Star Wars drought, so it's like one less day. Perfect.
I think it's purely a marketing thing to catch the end of the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. They're also running it in limited theater runs like they did for Acolyte.
I didn't know that.
I did not know that. Fandango. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's up by you guys or not. But so I got my 2 tickets. I'm going to take my son on Monday at 7 o'clock to check it out, just like we did for Acolyte. And so that should be cool. But I think they're going to try to catch that wave, the end of the weekend, the Cyber Monday kind of thing. And but yeah, I'm surprised at how excited I am about this, and I love that. I mean, it's squarely aimed at the hearts and minds of Gen Xers and people who grew up on E.T. and Goonies and that mid to late 80s kind of, and whether even if you're not Generation X, you saw them on VHS in the 90s. So all those kinds of movies, they're aiming. I mean, even with the Major Tom use of the song, I don't. It's so funny because I get so much crap from people about some of the stuff I post, but I went out there and I said, this is for this particular show right now is being marketed heavily toward us and me, who's a little bit older, to just be like, remember Star Wars? Remember this fun stuff? Remember before you were worried about Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday? Like, this is the stuff for you. And it's also for my 12-year-old son and, kids who are age 7 to 12, just like go and forget about, you don't need to know the Jedi lore and you don't need to know the High Republic and this, just go and have fun with Star Wars. And I'm really thinking that that's what this is going to be about. And I think it's going to be a big, I'm hoping it's going to be a big hit. I'm mostly hoping that people just don't pick on it. I hope people just are like, it's fun. And those that don't like it, just go, it's like the Young Jedi Knight, whatever. So what's the animated show?
Adventures, I think.
Yeah. The Young Jedi Adventures. That's fun. And, I happen to know a couple of the writers and stuff. And so I've watched it for that, but that's the only reason I've watched it. But that because it's for a specific audience. So, but I'm psyched. I really think it's going to be great.
You brought up the Monday thing, which is a good point, but I'm curious why they wouldn't maybe put it on Thanksgiving then.
Yeah.
Why not just drop it on Thursday?
Dude, if they did it like a Sunday night Disney, like ABC special or something.
Oh, man. And they put the Wonderful World of Disney intro in front of it. It's fun. But the other thing too, sorry, is like 2 weeks ago I said, Brock, who's Disney? Who's Disney? Who's Star Wars for? Like,
right.
what? And he said it's for 40-year-olds. Like, basically, it was like, it's for, and it's exactly what you just said. Because it's funny, when I first saw this trailer, and Brock knows because we talked about it, I wasn't a fan of the use of Major Tom. I'm like, I don't want that in my Star Wars. And I was being that grumpy old man yelling at the sky. But I said, but I understand that is not for me. Like, they have me. That's to get the younger generation. But I also said, how much better would it be if they just used Star Wars music?
Yeah.
And now they're using Star Wars music in the ads, and I'm like, it's so much better. I'm sorry not to toot my own horn here, but it's so much better. And like, I got used to the Major Tom, but oh man, Star Wars music is the best.
It is, and that was one of my, I know we're talking about live action Star Wars throughout this roundtable, but that was one of the things that struck me the weirdest about Mando. As much as I loved Mando, and now I love the music, I love what Goranson did.
I remember the first episode. I hold that right here to drop it on you anytime.
Yes, and I couldn't get used to it. So I do agree with you, and I think a lot of people were concerned that was actually going to be in the show and stuff like that, and I think it was purely a marketing thing to try to. And you know what? We all talked about it, so it worked.
Yep.
So
yeah.
I was just on their sorry. This skeleton crew in the theater captured my imagination immediately, and I stopped listening. So in Canada, we have the Cineplex. That is basically the theater to go to. I mean, some people are just like, there's other things. They are showing Skeleton Crew, but nowhere near where we live. It's
nothing's near where I live.
And it's on the 30th at 10 a.m. I thought it said 10 p.m.
The 30th?
Yeah.
In BC?
Yeah.
It's a time difference.
If you want to go to Scotiabank Theatre Chinook or Cineplex Cinemas Langley, no, you can't even go. If you can't even go if you want to, because they're both sold out. 10 a.m. And I'm reading this correctly. Saturday, November 30th.
Wow.
That's the only ones in Canada. So
maybe
I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
What's the other theater we have? Landmark? Is that maybe it's at Landmark in Ontario?
Try Landmark, but yeah,
I've never been to a Landmark. We have two chains, Pete, in Canada. We lost our AMC. We lost them all. And
so you don't get the Nicole Kidman intros?
No, we never.
No,
I'm sorry about that.
I've heard only wonderful things about those.
Every time it starts, I'm like, please, let's just get to the damn movie.
That's one thing. The one thing I haven't been to a movie in forever because I don't live near one, and I do really, really miss going. Like, there's been some where I'm like, man, I want to go. And I'm probably gonna end up seeing Wicked with my wife, but like, the trailers on top of commercials, on top of it's like, gosh, man. The best experience I had was when I saw Scary Movie 2. This is how long ago it was. The movie was supposed to start at like 7 or 8, and the trailers started at 1:45. So
See,
it
that's
actually
smart.
started on time. They started all that stuff early. And I was like, oh, it's like being at an NBA game where the anthem is before the ball toss. I'm like, oh, great. Oh man, yeah, that's the one thing I don't miss is sitting
Yeah.
through 8
Yeah,
hours, especially when the movies are so long.
Yeah, my AMC theater literally is 25 minutes of trailers. 25 minutes. And I used to love the trailer part, and now I'm just like, holy crap. But that's the great thing about now you buy your tickets in advance, so you know where you're going to sit. So now I get there like 10 after, and I'm just like, enough.
I think I would go see Skeleton Crew. I don't know you Brock,
Yeah.
but this is one where I'm like, yeah, Phil Tippett's back. It just looks like somebody was complaining about it. I thought, well, obviously, but like, I'm like, yeah, but it looks like do we forget Return of the Jedi? Like, have we forgotten that part of Star Wars? Like, you know, like everyone's like, and the thing is, I think the problem is, I don't know if you guys want to go on this, but like, we're older. So we were kids when it came out, but now we're older. So we want the more mature Andor Star Wars. And I say we as like not us, but like a royal thing. But really, like, you can't forget that part of Star Wars either. Like, I think you can play in both worlds, and we're going to get that in like a span of 5 months or whatever, 3 months.
But I think that's the really interesting thing, and I think it's a challenge, and it's weird because you have almost like 2 tracks of fandom, right? You have people who are like, Star Wars is now my religion, and so the lore needs to stay the same. Nothing can change. I am now older, so I want my stories to be more, you know, I want them to be more violent and more dark, and that's fine. But Star Wars, that's not what Star Wars really is. And I think we do absolutely forget that, like, you know, I think I probably said it last time I was on with you guys, but like for my son, he can't sit through the first 6 movies. They're just too boring for him. They're slow, you know, especially, gosh, episode 4, forget it. Like, it's a hard movie for him to watch, but he absolutely loves Bad Batch. He loves Ahsoka. He loves the Clone Wars. Like, that's Star Wars for him. And that's totally fine. He did not watch Andor. He didn't make it through the first episode because it was, you know, it was a different style. But there's nothing wrong with having those different styles. What the problem is when people start to say that that's the only style. And because honestly, Star Wars should not fit together. I mean, you have wizards and puppets and crazy stuff, and you have political intrigue, and I think that, you know, people complained about episode 1 that it was all about politics and tariffs and stuff, and yeah, we're living it. But but this was, you know, difficult for people, and now that's what Star Wars really is. I mean, how could we go from Bad Batch, which is, you know, fun, somewhat serious, but usually fun A-team in space, to Andor, to the Acolyte, to Ahsoka, to Mando. I mean, they're so different, but they're all in the same universe. They all exist, and that's great.
Yeah.
I don't know what my point is, but that's
Star Wars is, I think, you know, I think I don't know. I think sometimes like you said, we take Star Wars too seriously, and at the end of the day, who cares?
Yeah,
just have fun with this.
And you don't have to love all of it.
Exactly. Speaking of not loving all of it, Brock hated Andor.
Did you? Really?
No, he did not.
I hated any of it.
I was about to leave. I was about to excuse myself.
Brock's actually has liked it more than not Andor. I love Andor. I think Andor is the reason why it's not better than Mandalorian, and this is objectively true, is the egg episode of Mando continues to be the greatest thing to hit television since the dawn of television. I love the egg episode, but Grogu, I don't like. They're very different. It's hard to even compare the two shows in a lot of ways because they're Star Wars, but they're so different. But let's talk a little bit about the failures of Disney Plus Star Wars, because I think that you know, is something that has happened. Like, look, I talk about this all the time. I love Book of Boba Fett, and I will die on that hill that it is an underrated gem. And we just lost 7 subscribers, Brock. Sorry. But I love Book of Boba Fett. But The Acolyte is one that came out, and I didn't love The Acolyte. I loved aspects of the Acolyte. Like, I think there was a lot of good there that got bogged down with some weird decision making.
Mhm.
But the reality is it won't have a second season. And it is officially, because I think unofficially there might be others, but it is officially probably the biggest failure Star Wars has had on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Brock, you liked The Acolyte. You enjoyed it. But I'll let you talk about it. And how do you feel about no season 2? And do you think, well, how do you feel about no season 2? Let's start with that.
I don't know how to feel because there's no plan for Star Wars. Let's be honest.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's
like,
the
there's no
biggest
plan,
problem.
so it's like it's
Yeah.
not like I have any like insight of like, oh well, we're thinking about this, or like even if they're like, next season is gonna be about dragons, they're like, oh, they don't even have that. They don't have that. Like, let's be honest. So and like
You're not wrong.
so it's just like it's a bummer, but it's like the beauty of Star Wars and I guess Marvel to an extent is like you cancel something, it's like those characters still exist, right?
Yeah.
They've canceled She-Hulk apparently quietly at
That's
Disney
unfortunate.
Plus. Yeah, great show. But they easily can just grab Tatiana Maslany and just drop her in somewhere else. Lord knows, like an Avengers movie with more characters is like just the status quo. So it's like I'm not that concerned. Like, but like, you know, it is a bummer because it's just like the Acolyte was a great idea, but like, yeah, it just seemed like should we have 2 more episodes? Should we have less characters? What was the point? Like, that's like, even if I like this and this and this and this, and there's always something fun to watch in the episode. I was like, what exactly was your point? Because this was like the introduction for anyone that doesn't read it to the High Republic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, did you learn anything about the High Republic outside of they wore white cloaks? Like you don't really like, what was the point? And that's just like one thing, right? And it's just like, who was the villain? What are we saying about the Jedi, or what? Or so it's just sort of like it ends, and it's just like, I think James and I have talked about this before. It's like you ended the show as if like we're gonna get a second season. Ahsoka did it too. Or it's just like it's nice to stick the landing, and then after the credits, because Lord knows all 3 of us wait till the end of the credits. It's just like
Right.
and you're like, boom, Book of Boba Fett like reveal or whatever.
Right. Well, honestly, I think that's a big problem for streaming series in general. I think is everything is written to extend the story versus telling the story, right? So, like House of the Dragon season 2 was 10 episodes of a trailer for season 3. At the end of the day, it did not close anything. I loved that show, and I loved it until the credits ran. I was like, I mean, I still loved the story and everything, but I was just so disappointed. And I think that this is a missing skill set, and people try to pin it on Star Wars, and it's not just Star Wars. It's a missing skill set. People still haven't learned how to write streaming series. They they take a movie idea and they stretch it over 8 to 12 episodes, and they write it, and then the streaming service says, great, we're going to make it a series, but let's be ready for season 2 if it happens, right? Willow is another example of a really fun, really good series that was clearly set up for a season 2. But the one good thing about Willow was it ended. So I'm disappointed we're not getting a second season of Willow, because I really loved it. And my son loved it. He was so in fact, at the end, he was like, oh, cool, we're going to get another season. I was like, well, son, let me tell you about streaming.
I think you watched it in time too,
right? Yeah, because it's gone. But like that was the problem with the Acolyte. That was also my big problem with Ahsoka. I loved Ahsoka. I thought Ahsoka was really cool until the last episode, and not just because of the zombie stormtroopers. It was because the story left so much. I mean, basically, we traded in Ezra for Ahsoka and Sabine missing somewhere in the galaxy, and it was such an unsatisfying ending. Book of Boba Fett, like it or not, which we can go back and forth on that all day.
We can all agree it's the best thing Disney.
Right, it was
Star
the
Wars
best
has
thing
ever
that
produced.
Disney and Star Wars has ever done. But at least it ended. Right. It just, we don't, I would love a second season of that story. It doesn't need to be Book of Boba Fett 2, but extending that story. Let's see what happened to the Marshal and all that other stuff. But it ended, which was great. And that's why Mando season 4 not happening doesn't bother me at all. Because I think Mando season 3, even though it had bumps and it was inconsistent, it ended perfectly. If you tie it back to the first season, that ending was everything it needed to be, and it was perfect. And we don't need, I mean, I'm excited about the Mando and Grogu movie and more stuff happening in the Mandoverse, but we don't need more Mando and Grogu story because their story ended in a nice way. Right, twice. Yes, true. True. Right. It ended and then started again in the Book of Boba Fett and then ended again. Right. Yes.
But they ended it well both times, I thought. Like
yes.
Like, here's an ending that you're sad. I think whatever you thought of both series, like, yeah, their story was satisfying, like where we got to, I think.
For sure. Yep.
But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, streaming in general is just strange, where they can't figure out how to do a story. I was saying, like, Brock and I were talking about this forever on these, where it's like, what is because I don't watch Game of Thrones or any of those things.
Right.
And I was like, how do these shows work where people aren't so pissed off like we are when, like the Acolyte ends and you're like, what, just like an episode of the Acolyte would end. And you're like, but what happened? Like, why did you write? Like, the one thing that annoyed me the most with the Acolyte was episode 4, before the big cool fighting and deaths and all that.
Right.
Where I like the episode. I'm like, oh, I like talking. Brock knows I like boring stuff. If you make it boring, I find it fascinating. So I was like, yeah, they're talking. This is what I'm here for. But then it ended with the reveal of the Sith dude flying down. They're like, what is that? And they put their lightsabers, and then it cut. And I said, and I just felt that was disingenuous to the audience, to the viewer, because you made us sit through an entire thing where people don't have attention spans to do that anymore. And then the payoff is next week.
Right.
But you gave us the payoff. Like, if they would have cut it earlier, but no, we sat there. We trusted you. It's like, I don't know. They try to deceive the viewer too much and try to trick us into like going along with them. And not just Star Wars or just the Acolyte. Like, Ralph Boner in WandaVision pisses me off to this day, where I'm just like, why would you, like, there's no reason for that. You're just lying. Like, don't lie to the audience. Don't string us along. Like, have a thing. And yeah, that annoys me. But I thought the Acolyte, just like Obi-Wan Kenobi, for me, had some really cool concepts that just didn't. I think Obi-Wan landed a little better, but they just didn't land in the Acolyte. Like Brock says, like, more High Republic stuff. Like, you love the High Republic, Brock. I don't know if you read it, Pete, but Brock loves it, and it, like, everyone I know who's read it really kind of likes it a lot. Like, they're like, it's pretty good, but not a lot of people are reading it, unfortunately. But like, I don't know, like, what else would you have added, Brock, High Republic wise, to the Acolyte that someone like me wouldn't even know?
I don't know. Like, see, this is the thing. It's like, I mentioned that, but it's just like, it's more of like, what was the point? Because it's just like, you could have said it, maybe not. It's weird because it's like, it's not the Anakin Obi-Wan era of the Jedi Council, but like, it's close. It's like really close, right? Or at least the Acolyte is. Like, the book series is about 100 or 200 years before. But that's like not the point. It's like, if you're gonna set it in that, then reference it. It was just like, why even bother mention? Like, I mean, it's not like they're ever gonna be like, this is the High Republic. I don't know even if I can't remember. Is there a crawl in the first episode? Does it explain anything?
It does give a little bit of back. It's like a little paragraph thing, sort of like the Solo movie. Yeah.
So then, like, you get out of your trouble to be like, this is happening in this era, and then that's it. It's just like, if anything, it's just like, the only reason to set it in that era is that the Jedi aren't really like, they're like peacekeepers. They're not like what we see in the prequels, but like, I don't think the story had that need to be there. They were just like, the Jedi show up when there's trouble, and they're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, I think it did a nice job of sort of setting up that sort of, this is how the Jedi really screwed up in Phantom Menace and missed, and this was the beginnings of them. Sure. But that being said, an 8-episode, the problem was they were all short, and it could have been a great 2.5-hour movie. I think it would have been a great 2.5-hour movie, or a 12-episode 1-hour series where you're that was what made Game of Thrones great when it was at its peak was, you'd have an hour episode of just two characters kind of walking across Westeros, and it was you built the story. This felt so rushed, and so so to your point, I do agree. I think it did feel like it was it didn't know what it wanted to be. I personally, the Acolyte I thought was it's like The Last Jedi to me, right? In that I think the story is fantastic. I think the people who wrote it understood Star Wars better than a lot of people who've written Star Wars. I mean, Leslie Headland put in stuff that was so deep and so like payoff for fans who've been around forever, and then they missed it because they were too busy about complaining about a birth date or something. But it was great Star Wars. But I honestly, like, Last Jedi is probably my favorite Star Wars story, but I almost never watch it because it's just like it's a great movie, but it's like it's too heavy. When I want Star Wars, I want Phantom Menace, I want Empire Strikes Back. So but again, great story, but it just didn't deliver well enough. It was so bumpy, and it wasn't sure what it wanted to be, I think.
I think you hit a really good point there. It's like, and granted, we could easily just write this off as we're oversaturated with so much media these days, but it's just like, how often do you rewatch anything?
True. Yeah.
Like, there is a few times. I can't remember. I think I actually rewatched Ring of Power season 1 to be ready for season 2 of Ring of Power. And it's just like, great show. But then, like, with that kind of show, because it's Lord of the Rings, like the minutia of the details. I'm like, I don't need to. I was like, but then watching it was like, oh yeah, I'm glad I watched this. But it's just like very rarely do I think I've come to a point where I'm like, oh, I might reread this book I read 20 years ago. I'm like, oh, what a novel concept. But like 20, 30 years ago, we were like, let's watch the same movie over and over again because it's the only one we have.
Well, I wonder if that's a problem for Star Wars, because that's probably why we are Star Wars fans the way we are, because we had 3 or 6 movies to watch over and over and over and listen to the soundtrack over and over and over and play with our figures. But now, like, you go to the Star Wars section of Disney Plus and you're like, I don't even know where to start. Do I want to watch do I want to watch the Tales of the Jedi, or do I want to invest in the whole season of Clone Wars? Do I want to but it is weird. Like, I'm also at a weird stage in my life where, like, if I have time to kill, I end up watching there's like a long list of movies and shows I want to watch. Like, I've never finished Breaking Bad. I know the problem is I know how it ends and all that stuff. So I'm like, not. But like the other night, I just was like, oh, look, it's Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I've seen this movie 3 times. I'll watch it a 4th time. I don't know why. I could have used that time to watch something new. But you're right. There's that weird attention span. But again, I think, to bring it back to the other point, is there's this weird challenge of writing good television. I think Fallout did a great job of ending and being done. That's cool. That'll work. I'm scared to death of Dune Prophecy because I'm enjoying it so far, but I just have this feeling that it's going to end, and I'm going to be like,
I'm liking it. I'm not loving. I'm like, there's like, I can't tell if it's going to be good or just fall flat on its face. Like, it's like,
that's the way I'm feeling. Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, there's some scenes I'm like, okay, you got this. And other scenes I'm like, where are you? I don't know. Like, I'm just very like, I'm nervous about watching. And the episodes, those are over an hour long episodes. And if you know me, I like my Disney Plus 25 minutes because my, like, I mean, I don't actually because they need to have a beginning, middle, and end. But man. You brought up a point though, Brock, about the High Republic. Why the High Republic? Because one thing I was thinking about, I think I mentioned this on another show, was it was like all that stuff with the Jedi and how we see how they get to the place in the Phantom Menace, but it's 100 years. It's some of the stuff with the Council not liking, like the Jedi not believing them and stuff, like the Senates and stuff. I'm like, there's 100 years of this going. Like, it almost is too much time gap between the things they were doing. It's like, I get it, that's cool, but you might be a little too far removed from the prequels. Like 100 years that's a long time. You know what I mean? Like, if they would have said it 50 years, maybe it's like, okay, this is the beginning. But 100 years is almost, this never crossed my mind when I was watching it. So this wasn't the reason why it failed. But it's like, just thinking about it after you're saying, it's like, why that you could have done any time in between there. It just like what they wanted to do would have been stronger in that capacity, closer to the Phantom Menace timeline, I think.
That's a
I
good
mean-
point. Yeah.
I mean, you could go to our what Pete was saying about marketing, and maybe it's just a marketing. They're like,
Yep.
"Hey, this thing is going to happen in the High Republic. By the way, we have a book series that exists right now, and you get dummies like me or chumps that be like, oh, I'll buy into this,' and then you're like, this is pretty good." That's
But I'll tell you
nothing
what,
to do with it.
I do agree. I think so. I think the problem for Acolyte was around the way it was delivered. It was just very choppy. It was very, it was rushed. It wasn't rushed. It was, there was, it just, again, I think it had the bones of maybe the best Star Wars series story.
Mm-hmm.
From a depth perspective. I still think Mando season 1 and 2 are just like a perfect Star Wars story. But from a depth and lore perspective, I think it was all there. But to your point, I think what if they did it as a prequel to the prequels and really sold it and had some stuff that we saw in the prequels, like maybe hints of the Emperor or whatever, just enough to pull it. Like my dad, who I reference all the time, he's a 70-something-year-old man who watches all the live action stuff, usually calls me and is like, okay, what was this guy doing and who was that and why was that person doing that? But he had zero interest in the Acolyte. He just couldn't get into it. And so I think I don't know, plus $300 million was a lot of money. I don't know where it went. I mean, you look at Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, which cost, I think, about the same amount, and it just looks like a movie.
Yeah.
You look at Dune Prophecy, it looks like a movie. You look at Penguin, and it looks like a movie. And
Penguin was 12 million. 12 million for Penguin.
That was it?
12
and
to 15 million to say, yeah.
And it all went into Colin's makeup, I think.
Yeah, seriously. But even Andor looked like a movie.
Yes. Yeah. So it's proof they can do it. And I think, and that's one of the challenges too, is like, that was my biggest problem with Kenobi was it looked flat. It looked like it was a TV show. And I mean, that was really my biggest problem with it. I had no problem with Leia and all those other things. I thought it was a cool, fun story. But yeah, and I'm hopeful because when I look at the previews for Skeleton Crew, it looks like a major motion picture. Yeah. It looks like it's really well done. So let's hope for the best there, I guess.
Jude Law's going to bring it in that show.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Speaking of Jude Law, it's holiday time. We got to watch The Holiday with Jude Law. Cameron Diaz has the best score, man, other than Star Wars. I'm telling you, Hans Zimmer crushed that one.
I've never seen it.
You don't have to watch it. Just honestly, just listen to the theme. I'll send you the theme because it is like, why is this in a rom-com? Like it's so good. My wife loves it. Every time I watch it, I'm like, why is the music so damn good? So let's shift gears a little bit and get a little bit negative now. What do we hate about? No, let's talk about.
You can use my face on your thumbnail for this, and you use the laser eyes and stuff. Yeah,
with a circle around you and an arrow.
Yes. All the keys.
Alexa, stop. I said something and she thought that it's like it's a she. Like it's
Alexa's like ordering 40 pounds of ham. What?
The Black Friday order has been shipped. Have you guys had Black Friday all month down there? Is that just like us reading it? Okay. Good.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, literally my family put up our Christmas tree last weekend just because we were like, we're just dealing with the depression of, our government. So we're like, there's got to be some positive somewhere. But no, I mean, it does feel like, yeah, I mean, everything's for sale. Everything's on sale. Every time I get a text, I'm like, oh, one of my friends is oh no, it's Home Depot telling me that Christmas trees are 30% off.
I got those all day today for these stupid sales. Like, get 20% off. I'm like, 20% off is not enough to get me to shop at your store, sir. I need 50 or above. Let's shift gears, though. We talked a little bit off the top. Daniel RPK, Scooper. Did we talk about this while we recorded just before? He said a couple days ago, not today, a couple days ago, about Dave Filoni making a movie in the Mando, or making a new series in the Mandoverse. Mandoverse seems to be like the bread and butter of Star Wars right now. Like this, like they can't, even when they lose in the Mandoverse, they haven't seemed to really lose that badly there. So I think this is a great idea. I think bring more. We know that Filoni's going to do is, well, we don't know because it's a Star Wars movie that was announced, so it might not happen. But Filoni's supposedly doing a movie sometime in the future. So adding more, plates to that dinner table would be great. But I'm kind of hoping I'm hoping we learn more about Ezra and Sabine. And as someone who loved Rebels, I obviously know a lot about them.
Yeah.
But I think one of the weaknesses of Ahsoka was the translation of them into people who did not watch Rebels. I know people were like, well, what's the big deal? And I think even like the search for Ezra seemed a little off. If you look at it from a newbie perspective, you're like, why?
100%.
What's so great about this guy? So I hope we get more of that. And I don't know what the show is going to be, but I think this is great news, and I think they need to really, really build on that Mandoverse, Brock.
Give me a trailer and I'll believe it. Like,
Nope.
is it going to come out after or before the Kevin Feige movie? When is
Hey-o.
that gonna happen? So it's like, I mean, sorry, Grogu Mandalorian is Filoni's movie, right?
It's a Favreau movie with Filoni writing it, I think.
But like, Filoni's supposed to get his own movie as well, right?
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly. So it's just like, how about we just do something? Like, just do one thing. You don't need to do two things. I'm all, you know me. I love Dave Filoni. So if he makes stuff, great.
Like, but I think that's a bigger issue though. Is why the hell do they feel they need to announce these things that they're nowhere close to? But Pete, I'll let you go.
Yeah.
I'll let you say your.
No, I honestly, I think, the one thing that the toxic fans talk a lot about is that, we didn't get our Luke Skywalker. We never got the original cast together again, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I like that they're kind of taking their time and maybe coming back to a Rey movie. I like to believe that, Mark Hamill told Daisy Ridley, on the set one day, like, don't be like me and wait 30 years to come back. Do it while you're young and you can do your own stunts. But that being said, I think Disney and Lucasfilm have found that they've got a portion of the universe that all fans can get into, because I think a lot of there's that percentage of the fandom that, may be louder than they actually are, but that doesn't like the sequel era for whatever reason. And I get it. And it was successful to a degree, but if they can exploit this section of the timeline, because it allows them to do callbacks to stuff that we're all familiar with, and it allows us to find new characters that we don't know how their story ends, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's a great business move. And keep growing that universe. Make that Star Wars. That's fine. I can live with that.
And they can do what they weren't able to do, because when Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford were of perfect ages to continue, they were making the prequels. Right. And then there was no more Star Wars. And you can hate Disney all you want, but they kind of made those movies as soon as they could. Like, it wasn't like they didn't wait on them, really. They waited maybe an extra year, or they didn't wait on them at all. Yep. Like, so their hands were a little tied. And if you don't like what they did with them, that's a different story. But they were still older than I think fans needed to be. Because I really think one thing I would like to do would be show more of Luke's story, and in TV, whether it's animation or not, but in TV, Luke's story of how he got from Return of the Jedi to Last Jedi, because Force Awakens doesn't count. But show, and I think because I think his transition to who he becomes, like, I don't have, my issue is different from everybody else's. I just thought it's lazy because, make somebody depressed and miserable. And Brock nailed it a year before the stupid movie came out and said he was going to be like Yoda and crazy. And he fished a Muppet fish and he milked a space cow. And Brock called it a year before. And I was just like, why do we have to do a podcast where Brock ruins movies for me? Why are we doing this?
That should be the name of the podcast. Brock ruins movies.
Brock ruins movies. But the thing is, like, part of the people's problem with him, though, ultimately, when they're like, you ruined Luke or whatever, is we didn't see him. It all happened off camera, and even we didn't really get a story about it in the movies. Yeah. We got a little bit of, I had a dream. Like, okay, but what led to that moment? Like, how did you get from here to here? And when we saw him in Mando, they were like, we're going to try to give you the Luke that you want, but there's still the issue of, but how does he get there? Like,
and they can use the Mandoverse time frame to do that. Yeah. And I'll say it, bring in Mara Jade, make that part of the reason why he is where he is, because like I was not a huge EU acolyte. I enjoyed the stuff what I read and that sort of thing. But man, if you bring Mara Jade in and make part of the reason why he was disillusioned was because of whatever happened with her, and make her connected to the Empire remnant and things like that, that would be really cool. But I will say, and maybe it's controversial, but recast Luke. You got to do it. We can't do this deep fake shit anymore. That's got to stop. It pulls me out. Yep.
Sebastian
So
Stan,
he's ready.
listen.
Yeah.
Or just get the guy that played him in the Boba Fett stuff, like that guy. But Sebastian Stan is the one that. But like, yeah, I think the AI stuff I think was perfect for what they did. It was they like, okay, we had Mark Hamill portray him, like it was like the perfect PR move, right? They're like Mark Hamill's, and he had all the pictures. That's why I honestly think before Mando and Grogu comes out, we're gonna get like 7 pictures of George Lucas on the set. They're like, George was here again, and you're like,
George likes this.
Yeah, he directed that scene in Solo, remember? That's like their PR move. But I thought that was great. That was genius. But I'm with you. Like, just recast them. Let's move on. Get somebody in there. Like, I think Mark Hamill has already come out and said he's okay with it.
Yeah.
Brock, what would you say?
Yeah, do it. I mean, there's even that mention. There's that mention in Rise of Skywalker with Lando when he shows up. He's like, "Oh yeah, Luke and I went and did something." And I think after hearing that, I was like, "Make a cartoon about that." Like, I'm just like, show me that. So it's like a cartoon. You could hypothetically do it and not piss off too many people.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, no. Like, it's just, why are we being precious about these things? Like, who cares? Like, everyone's like, no one can be Wolverine. It's just Hugh Jackman. It's like, no, why? Why are you holding up? We have 17 Batmans, and it's bothered nobody, I don't think. But
even Spider-Man.
And we've reached a point where, and there's a whole other conversation, because I actually love what the DC EU has done with their characters. But we've reached a point where the Star Wars stories are bigger than the actors. They're bigger than the way they look, right? Because you have 5, 7, 10 different looks for Anakin as it relates to whether it's books, movies, TV, de-aging, it's animation. So it's the character. It's Luke. And if it's Sebastian Stan or some guy that is, working in Hollywood and nobody's ever heard of, but can pull off what's necessary. I mean, that's where I think Alden Ehrenreich gets really forgotten. He did such a great job with the character. I never thought he was Harrison Ford or doing an impression of Harrison Ford. I just thought he did a good job with the character. Now, there are times where I didn't see him as Han Solo. He was a cool character, but that's another directing challenge more than anything else. But I think recast him, because the characters are what we care about. We love Mark Hamill. We're thankful for Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford and Billy D. Williams and Dave Prowse and all this, but they created characters that are bigger than they are, and that alone says so much. Let's let those characters live on, because Star Wars is still going to be going when we're gone. So that's, it's got to be the characters need to live on and be told in different ways.
And we all forget Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
like literally. Yeah. I remember when they first announced that Ewan McGregor was playing him. Somebody else was how I referred to it. I was like, oh, yeah. I was like 18. I'm like, oh, why? Yep. I was like, okay, whatever. And then I was like, oh yeah, he's Obi. And now who's Obi-Wan?
Right.
Rarely anyone thinks of Alec Guinness anymore. You think of Ewan McGregor now.
And honestly, you're right. I mean, if you took my 12-year-old son right now and you did 3 Luke Skywalker movies with John Smith from wherever playing Luke Skywalker, in 15 years, that's his Luke Skywalker. And that's fine. If the story is consistent and tells something that helps round things out and fills in gaps and stays true to the character, then do it.
Yeah.
Actually, funny story. John Smith, his pharmacist is Geddy Lee's uncle.
From Newmarket, Ontario.
Really? Newmarket,
wow. Everybody in Canada knows somebody famous.
Yeah.
For all the people listening and watching who have no idea what we're talking about, that's fine. That's fine.
It's funny for us. You don't need to worry about it.
You don't need to know. But no, it's a good. I think when they first got it, they're like, don't recast. And I understood. Like, you have them, use them, whatever. And then the Ehrenreich thing happened and the movie bombed, or, for what it is.
Right.
And now they're scared to recast. And it's like, that's not why the movie didn't succeed.
Right.
Like it had nothing to do with the recast. I mean, maybe people weren't interested in a young Han Solo movie. Maybe it was because of the aftermath of The Last Jedi. Who knows what it was, or the marketing. Million reasons. I think May was the biggest thing, to be honest. I think you put it in December. I don't know if it does a ton better, but I think it does better.
Put it against Avengers and Deadpool,
yeah,
and not market it until the Super Bowl. It's not going to work.
I remember they flopped Mary Poppins with Solo. If they reverse those, they probably both do better than they did. But
you are right about that. Yep.
There's a multitude of reasons, but they're blaming it on the recasting, and they don't want to touch these characters when they're younger. And I think they need to get their heads out of their buttholes and flesh out Luke's story. Like everybody loves Luke Skywalker. Everybody in Mandalorian season 2 draws dropped when he showed up. Brock sent me a text like, when it happened, 6 a.m. And like, that's people just do it. And people are going to you make Luke, you make him the hero that everybody thinks they want. And then you slowly show him to turn into, I'm going to fish for Muppet fish. But I mean, how did he know to milk that cow? Does anyone?
But I mean, it's a great story, and where he ended up is actually really great. He saved the galaxy again. Mm-hmm. But I agree, and again, now it's funny. I just started playing Star Wars Outlaws with the new update, and I'm enjoying it more than I did before. I don't know what they did in the update, but now I'm actually playing it and really getting into it. And right now I'm running around Kijimi. And I'm like, this is really cool. And I realize that my son will probably play it after me. And he's probably playing it right now. And then he'll watch Rise of Skywalker and he'll be like, oh, yeah, I know this place. And that's really cool. And Star Wars is so big now. It doesn't matter where you know this place or know that character from. They're all connected. And so, yeah, let's tell that story from wherever. And again, bring in the EU stuff. Except don't drop a moon on Chewie and everything will be fine. So
after the accolade, they might be afraid of the EU stuff now too. Who knows? Like they're so reactionary over there that it's like, just calm down.
Yes, but make Sophie Turner Mara Jade, please. That's all I ask. That's my only. I will riot, as they say on Twitter, if they don't. So
it's going to be Lindsay Lohan, and you're going to love it.
I'll watch it anyway. It doesn't matter. They could do paper lunch bag puppets of Star Wars, and I'll be like, this is fun.
Why haven't they made a Muppet Star Wars? That's a bigger question.
Oh man, the Lego Star Wars is great, but do a Muppet Star. Yes,
Muppet Star Wars. Oh, man, like we have.
Let's make that petition now.
All right, we'll wrap this up with one final thought. We'll go around and we'll say let's just talk about our favorite episodes of live action Star Wars on Disney Plus. Everyone knows it's the egg episode. For me, I love that stupid episode. It is fantastic. A great episode. I just love it. I'm like, that was when Baby Yoda at the time used his force power. You're like, what?
First time, yes.
Yeah, and you're like, it was so good. I loved it, Mudhorn. But you know what? The Eye episode of Andor is breathtaking.
Oh yeah,
with the lights in the sky, and I'm like, and it was just like, I don't know, that one really caught me too. I think those are my two favorite live action Star Wars episodes. I'm sure there's one amazing that you guys are going to say. I'm like, I'm an idiot, but I'm going to go ignorant because the egg is the best. And the Eye is just, I don't know. I think it might be the best looking live action Star Wars, maybe even of the movies too that we've gotten.
Would that episode also have the TIE fighter overhead?
I think that's the one. Yeah.
Because that was amazing. Yeah. They made cannon fodder the scariest shit you've ever seen. When that TIE fighter comes overhead, that is so and that's the magic of Andor. My favorite scene in Andor is when the pilots are climbing into the TIE fighters.
Yeah, so good.
It's just
that was in a trailer.
Yeah. Go ahead. You were gonna say, yeah.
No, I was just agreeing, geeking out.
Yes, nerd time. Brock, what are your favorite episodes of live action?
If I see, when I was thinking about this, I was like, with a lot of those shows, it's like, oh, I really like this part where they do this thing, or if there's a Wookiee, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Like, it's just like, there's so many interests, and that's just like, that's not special. If I had to choose a specific episode, it would probably be the first episode of Mandalorian, because the scene where like you're like, oh, this is fun, yeah, he brings them in cold, or warm or cold or whatever. It's all the same to him. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm like, oh, he's got like a ship, and it's kind of like the Millennium Falcon. Oh, IG-11 or whatever, IG-88 or whatever. It's like, that is cool. That looked like practical. But the scene where he finds out what he is hunting for, and the hand coming up like this, and you're just like, it's like that's the moment where we're like, okay, like this is something, and then also we're like, wow, another Yoda, like that's crazy. So like, I feel like on the level of the egg for James, that's that episode for me as well. But I think like the last episode of Book of Boba Fett, where like they're having that like street fight, and the Rancor shows up, and like Mando is there, and there's this one moment where they are in like a cart. I can't remember what it is, and they like hit something, and they all go in the air, and they're like, I was like, that's exactly what all these episodes should be. So it's just like, yeah.
You know what's funny about that episode? I might have mentioned it last time, but when I watched that episode of Book of Boba Fett, I did the same thing that I did when I went in for The Last Jedi, which I need to stop doing. And for Skeleton Crew, I've been very careful not to do this. But in my head, I knew how that episode was going to go. They were going to fight the Pikes. It was going to be this. It was going to be that. I don't even remember now looking back. And when it ended, I was like, man, it was a little disappointing. And then later that day, after school, my son watched it with me. And my son turned to me afterwards. He was like, that was the coolest Star Wars thing I've ever seen. And I realized he was right. You had Boba Fett, you had Mando, you had Baby Yoda, you had a Rancor, you just had street fights. You had like, it was everything for a 12-year-old Star Wars fan to love. And I totally missed it because I got so stuck in my own head. And you're right, Brock. That is a great episode from top to bottom. It really is.
And the finale of the best Disney Plus show.
So I have a couple different episodes. And yes, I mean, I think honestly, I don't think anything will ever top the first episode of Mandalorian. I think that was there was so much magic around that. There was just Star Wars was back. I mean, honestly, we hadn't seen Star Wars. We never saw it on TV other than the holiday special and the Ewoks. And it just worked. But if I'm to pull out a couple different episodes of things that I just absolutely episodes that I will watch over and over and over again, coming from the guy who says he never watches anything more than once, I would say my favorite episode of Mandalorian, other than the first one and the Luke episode, which I don't even know if it's my favorite episode so much as I just like what it did. The return of Boba Fett in whichever episode was, when he was just a killing machine, and the music. I was so disappointed that they didn't use the Boba Fett theme that they created for Mandalorian as the music for Book of Boba Fett, because it sounds like a dog hunting. It's just so good. The song is called Capture the Flag. If you have the Ahsoka or the Mandalorian soundtrack, go listen to that one track. It is so good. And that should have been the theme for Book of Boba Fett. But it was just cool to see Boba Fett come back and be the badass we all imagined him to be. So that was great. My other favorite episode of live action Star Wars is the Ahsoka Anakin episode from the Ahsoka series, because they did such a great job. It was this really unique thing where Hayden Christensen played the animated version of himself, and he did just such a great job of capturing that. And Ariana Goldblatt, who played young Ahsoka, at first was a little off-putting, but then once I realized it's live action, and that I was then able to say that the animation was a cartoon version of her versus the other way around. I just want to see more of that. We have a few precious years that we can get young Ahsoka and de-aged Hayden Christensen. And I hate to sound like the guys who have YouTube channels that are full of different Star Wars theories, but I would love to see, just give me maybe one season of some Clone Wars adventures of all of them together in live action.
Yeah.
I think, and they don't even need to be, there was so much that happened during the Clone Wars. Give us something on the side, but I just love that episode for so many reasons. It has my favorite shot of the ghost in it too, where it's flying over the water, and it's so great.
Yeah.
Great
And I think that the episode of The Acolyte, as much as The Acolyte is my least favorite show, even below Book of Boba Fett,
Because it's the best.
Because it's too good. Book of Boba Fett
Yeah.
is too. Like I can't even compare anything.
Yeah,
to it,
it's
so
its own.
worst.
It's on its own list.
It's so good that I can't even put it on my list. But the episode with all the fighting and the surprise Jedi deaths and stuff, I thought that was a fun. Hey, Jedi deaths, fun episode. But I think it had a lot going on, and there were some shocks and some surprises in that you don't normally get in Star Wars. So I thought that was pretty cool. So those would be my 3 favorite live action episodes.
I like that lightsabers killed people again.
Yeah.
Oh, good. They're threatening.
Yeah.
Great. Let's go.
3 holes in the back and you're dead.
I think Obi-Wan and Ahsoka were like, oh, I don't care if you get stabbed. I know you're fine. Like they do nothing anymore.
Yeah. Doesn't matter if you're the Inquisitor or whatever.
None of our episodes overlapped, which tells you that there's pretty good Star Wars out there. I mean, I do love Book of Boba Fett, and I make fun of that, but I do. I would actually put there's a few episodes. The first episode is so slow. I just love every second of it, just watching. Because one of my favorite things about Star Wars, and no kid now, like you mentioned your son, no kid now would ever love it. It's just C-3PO wandering the desert on Tatooine for like 6 hours. Like I'm like, this is fascinating. But kids now would just be bored. But I'm like, this is amazing.
When I think about, because yes, I did see Star Wars in the movie theater before it was called A New Hope. So when I think back to my memories of seeing that movie, I don't remember a lot of the movie. I remember driving home in the back of my parents' station wagon, pretending to shoot cars that went by like they were TIE fighters. That's what I remember. But my main memory image from Star Wars is 3PO and R2 in the desert, just sort of like the big giant shot. And then R2, crawling through, going through the canyon, and just like, to your point, not the action stuff. Yeah, I mean, I was forever imprinted with the look of the stormtroopers and things like that. That like changed me forever. But when I think about what I remember from the movie, everybody's like, oh, I remember the Star Destroyer going overhead. No, I remember 3PO in the desert. And I think that's why when this 3PO head came out, I just was like, when I don't know if you guys saw my video, but it's the only time I've done unboxings, and it's like, hey, this is cool. When I was holding that head for the first time, I was like, oh my God, this is my childhood. 3PO is my childhood. And it's, to your point though, my son, holy crap, what a boring shot. I always think of the shot. My friend and I talk about this all the time when we talk about how movies have changed. Jaws is one of my all-time favorite movies, top to bottom, beginning to end. Nothing wrong with that movie. But there's a scene where Chief Brody is walking out of his house and down the stairs and then down the little boardwalk and down to, and it's like, how long are we going to follow him walking out of his house?
Movies don't breathe anymore.
They don't. But it meant so much. You got so much from that. So yes, I don't know what that has to do with live action Star Wars other than make it look like movies. That's what I want. Dune Prophecy looks like a movie. Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon looks like a movie. Penguin looks like a movie. You can do that with Star Wars. You can absolutely do that. At least make me feel like I'm in a movie. And if I don't love the story, at least make me love what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Perfectly said. On that note, let's raise a glass to Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You have a great Thanksgiving. Is the turkey burning?
No, my wife's got that. You don't want me cooking that. I take care of the drinks, which means that there's probably some thirsty people down there. But I'm talking Star Wars. Shut up. I'm doing my thing.
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy Thanksgiving, gentlemen. Thanks for having me again. Boom.
Thank you for coming. Hope you have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
There's nothing in here. There's nothing in here.
Oh, no.
That was acting.
It's a fake.
Wait, hold on. I'm getting a phone call. Yes. Perfect timing. We're just wrapping up. Okay. Brock, we got to check the board. KK has been fired. She is out the door. That makes it a very happy Thanksgiving. Could you imagine like wishing somebody to lose their job? It's like you get your kicks.
The day
I hope
she
you're unemployed.
the day she resigns, people are gonna retire. It's not even resigns. The day she
Yeah,
retires,
yeah, exactly.
these freaks are gonna have a freaking party and take responsibility. We finally got her. She's 70 years old. Let her do it.
Yeah.
Let her go. She doesn't need to do this. Why she's putting up with your shit, I don't even know. So,
Like,
she's
we
not.
should make it. We
She's
should make it
right.
positive and change it from fire to retire. She's retired.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'll get behind Kathleen Kennedy should retire because she
Yeah.
deserves it, not because
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna go do a video as soon as my family leaves of Kathleen Kennedy should retire.
It could be.
Because she earned it.
I think I should retire because you tell me. She made Jones.
Let me just tell you about Kathleen Kennedy. She's awesome.
She's my aunt.
Yeah,
All right.
it all makes sense.
We'll wrap it up now. Thank you so much for joining us, Pete. Brock.
Thanks for having me.
It's Thanksgiving in the States. Are you going to Black Friday tomorrow?
No, man, I did that a week ago.
That's because you were always scum.
Rebel scum.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.